What's going on, y'all? I'm Marcus. Hey, you're at the channel The Debt Free Dad. In today's video, we're going to take an interesting dive into an interesting topic. We're going to look at some of the economic impacts, consequences, impacts. I ain't going to say consequences. That's a little too sensitive. People get sensitive about certain issues. But we're going to take a look at the economic impact of the Supreme Court's Roe versus Wade decision, or the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. So, as always, I got to give my disclaimer. I'm a licensed attorney, but I'm not y'all attorney. So, it's not legal advice, it's not finance advice. We just want to chop it up, letting y'all know what's going on financial topics, giving my take and opinions, and letting y'all know what we got going on over here in the household of the Debt Free Dad. Now, a few months ago, like 3 or 4 months ago, just to get everybody up to speed with where we were at or where we are currently. About 3 or 4 months ago, there was a leak of an opinion. The handwriting was on the wall. The Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Essentially, Roe versus Wade, Supreme Court decision that allows protections from a federal standpoint based on case law of a woman's right to have an abortion. Is in the privacy right, even though the Constitution doesn't expressly say anything about abortion. That's how it's kind of just been unilaterally interpreted. Hey, what's going on? I appreciate all y'all tuning in and jumping in and joining in. And so they leaked it. We already saw it coming. And sure enough, I guess they got leaked thinking that outrage was going to make those old guys on the Supreme Court overturn their decision. But, unfortunately, I already knew that wasn't the case because they got a lifetime job. If I had a job that was for my entire life, it ain't nothing that nobody would able to do that would make me change my decision on anything that I wanted to do. That's just kind of how it is. So that's kind of where it leads us. Now, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. They essentially said that, you know what, this isn't a federal arena, so to speak. We're going to kick everything back down to the states. Y'all make a determination on what y'all want to do. We're giving power back to the people. That's how they couched it. We're giving power back to the people to let their elected officials decide. So as soon as that opinion came out, like pretty much every southern red state was like, we're going to make it illegal. We're going to make it illegal. But and y'all may not know this, we want our politicians to be the smartest people in the room. And they really are smart when it comes to things that they want. But when they draft legislation on anything, I don't care if it's a tax bill, I don't care if it's something related to guns, is no way that they can think of all avenues. Essentially what happened is they say, hey, you know what? We want to make this legal or illegal, and then we'll figure it out on the back end. And so that's what happened. Roe versus Wade got overturned. It was punted to the states. If you live in a southern red state, abortion is probably illegal, and if it's not, it will be soon. And so you start to see all these stories. The first story we're going to talk about before we even get to the Unborn Child Support Act, which even the name, it has a potential to just, give me cause to pause as soon as I hear that name. But the first story that I saw that was interesting, and I'm going to give this lady credit. I think this lady was absolutely right. It was about, I don't know if you all saw it, but it was a pregnant woman who was 34 weeks, something like that. And she was driving in the HOV lane and she was stopped by law enforcement. So this woman right here, there she go, got a nice little baby bump and her nice little outfit on. Brandy Batoon was driving in the HOV lane and a law enforcement officer pulled her over. This is just some of the unintended consequences we all think about. But I thought this was genius. I don't know if this lady is an attorney or what, but she's smart as hell. This lady was pulled over in the HOV lane. HOV lane, you have to have at least, depending on the state, most states, you have to have at least 2 occupants in the vehicle. So the state trooper pulls her over. He pulls her over and he's like, you can't be in the HOV lane. It's just you in here. And she's like, she starts rubbing her stomach and patting her stomach. She was like, no, I'm pregnant with child. And I'm like, what was she? 32, 34 weeks? That's crazy. She got a $275 ticket. So yeah, she's 30 some odd weeks pregnant. She tells the officer this, and the officer is like, no, the law says that it has to be a person, an actual physical person in the seat. You in this seat, you in another seat. And so the lady's response, which was again genius. Well, no, of course she was in good old Texas. So we already know Texas is going to Texas. But she was in Texas, and her response was, well, no, according to the law, the state of Texas recognizes this child at this week as an individual. So, and there's a person. So based on that, it's two people occupying the vehicle. So what does the officer do? Idiotically, he writes her a ticket for $275. I think she actually go to court this Wednesday to defend that ticket. Honestly, I think she got a legitimate shot to win, but it's Texas. So, Texas is going to Texas. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Texas is going to Texas. So, it's kind of interesting. She actually lawyered up and everything. So that was the first story that I heard. And I was like, yeah, I don't think these senators thought things through. I appreciate all the birthday wishes. Yeah, your boy getting old. See all this gray hair? Well, it's interesting because it is interesting. I actually did a little open source research. In Texas, it's funny because the traffic laws do not recognize the unborn child as a person, but there are other areas of the law in Texas state law that actually does recognize it. I mean, yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I actually think she has a fair argument. I think the more interesting thing, though, is that this officer is an idiot. If I'm a state trooper and I pull a woman over and she says that this is her rationale, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, you know what, sister, you hella creative. I'm going to go ahead and leave it alone. And just, hey, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to write a ticket because I'm not going to end up on the news. Isn't that worth it? But this officer decided to take that dive. So that was the first instance where, I saw it and I was like, man, they passed the law, but they definitely didn't think these things through. And I know, yeah, I wouldn't live in Texas neither. I don't care how big of a ranch you could get for the price or how cheap the land or homes is. Florida, I'm going to throw on that list too. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, probably so. But, so I knew you all heard stories of a 10-year-old girl who was raped and was having a child. The state that she resided in made abortion illegal, so she had to travel to another state to have an abortion. And it's all of these things that really weren't thought out with no exceptions and, no real foresight as to, man, how are we going to, if this is the law and this is what we want to do in our state, how are we going to do it to make sure we're not putting people's life at risk? I think the craziest I heard was it was a lady who gave birth, who was pregnant. And I want to say when she went to go have an ultrasound, there was no heartbeat and the doctors wouldn't even remove the baby, even though the baby was no longer alive, because the doctor was like, I don't think we can do it under this new law. I mean, it's just getting crazy out there. And, it's funny. This one is going to be for you, Judy. We're going to tap into the good old state of North Carolina real quick. And this I thought was actually interesting. Let me see. In North Carolina, this one was also kind of wild too. And this is a bill that in North Carolina, state legislators controlled by the GOP, and they said, we're probably going to reintroduce this bill sometime in 2023. But essentially, this bill in North Carolina that is being proposed or going to be proposed, it allows for the self-defense of an unborn child. So it's actually kind of crazy if you think about it. If you read it, it's real nuanced. Okay, essentially the language says here that as a matter of indisputable science, it's funny when people want to listen to science and when they don't, but it says a human life is recognized by the state at the time of conception or fertilization until the moment of natural death. Any person who willfully seeks to destroy the life of another person by any means at any stage of life or succeed in doing so shall be held accountable for attempted murder or for first-degree murder, respectively. Any person has the right to defend his or her own life or the life of another, even by the use of deadly force if necessary, from willful destruction by another person. Even me reading that just sound kind of crazy, but essentially that law could make the way for someone to, let's say, let me give you a crazy scenario. One of the things that you hear a lot of pundits arguing is that, well, the federal government should take federal land and put clinics on it and facilities that can, perform abortion. So you have all these different people coming up with different ideas, but this law would essentially allow the self-defense. If a woman is actually going through an abortion, you have the right to defend yourself and use reasonable force necessary. But this law actually would allow deadly force to be used to protect an unborn child from, this isn't a scenario where I would understand, like a pregnant woman, a guy's assaulting her. That, hey, we all get that scenario. I can see exactly how that scenario would make sense. But this is particularly targeted, in my opinion, to focus on anyone who's actually even thinking or considering actually performing an abortion. So it gets kind of crazy when you look at it. Get kind of crazy when you see some of the laws that's just out there as it relates to abortion. So that leads me to the fact, hey, what's going on, sis? It leads me to the economic impact. And I saw this and I thought it, and of course, one of my good friends who's in the chat, Aaron. Aaron, by the way, I love your comments. Your comments I always have to reply to last because I actually have to think about what I'm going to say because just be deep. And so it's about the Unborn Child Support Act. Now, as soon as I saw that name, it kind of made me cringe, right? Not from a standpoint of, oh man, child support is great, because two things could be true. I think child support is something that is definitely needed, but I think is also a lot of BS that goes with it, just like everything else. Two things could be true. There's some good parts of it. There's definitely some people out there who need to be on child support so they could do their part, but there are some instances where, there's some things that, with regard to how courts apply child support payments, arrears to persons who actually are doing something. I've seen some crazy stuff. I don't even do family law. Thank God. God bless you, Judy, because I wouldn't want to do family law. But when I saw this law, I thought it was interesting. And let's go ahead and pull it up. And I'm not going to go through and read it verbatim, but I will give y'all a little scenario of what this law entails. And so essentially, it says that the state is able to enforce a child support obligation of the biological father of an unborn child to the mother of such child, provided that the mother requested child support. But essentially, the quick and fast version is at the time of fertilization, they deem individuals, or they would deem a child as an actual person. So child support can be paid from that time. How they'll establish it is when a medical provider actually gives them the date. And so this can be done in a form of back payment. Let's say it's 2 or 3 months has lapsed. A woman went maybe 8 weeks, 10 weeks before she found out she was officially pregnant. She can apply for child support, get back child support for those following months. And so that is very interesting. And just so you all know, this is a federal law. This a federal legislation. This isn't any state specific thing. This is coming down for the feds. So I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I think I maybe met like 2 guys in my entire life who were just like, oh man, thank God for this child support thing, because it worked out exactly how I needed. That generally isn't the case. And I know some women who have to pay child support. I think it's few and far between, but that's out there as well. But this law is actually interesting. This is a federal mandate, a federal bill that's going to get pushed. I don't think it's going to be enough in the Senate to actually pass this through. I don't think they're going to have the votes to pass it, but it leads to a lot of discussion. Let's talk about one thing. Think about it. Entire millionaires were made off of people not knowing who the father of their child was. DNA Diagnostics. Why do I know that name? Because I used to watch Maury. I used to watch Maury. Yeah, did you? I know. I saw that. And so it's going to be interesting. Now they do have mechanisms and ways to establish paternity of a child prior to the child being born. But it's going to be interesting. One of the things that I took a look at from hey, that was one of the discussions, and it was funny. I was just getting to the point. The question was like, well, what if, I mean, hey, people lie. People don't know who kids are. Hey, this is gonna be a good story time for Debt Free Dad. So, hey, Debt Free Dad almost was trying to was unrightly accused of being a child's father. I think it was the glasses. They see a guy with glasses, they just kind of think I was a little bit of a goofy. But it happens. You have to go through this whole rigmarole. I'm sitting there looking like a goofy, getting my cheek swabbed. I felt like 98.9% sure, but there's a lot of people who don't know, and my assertions were right. And so they were having discussions as to how is the best way to prevent that if, a guy's paying child support, a father's ended up paying child support during the course of the pregnancy. Woman doesn't find out she's pregnant until, let's give her 3 months. She applies for child support. The order for child support can come actually before the actual order to do the DNA test based on just how it's written. And so it's going to be interesting. One thought was if a determination to make child support payments were made and it was later found out that the individual was not the father, the mother would be responsible for repaying that money with 10% interest or some type of penalty. I think the problem with that is, who the hell gonna have the money? If somebody give you money for your child to help you out during the course of the pregnancy, no one is gonna have. I think it's very unlikely that if you go 5 or 9 months or 8 months making child support payments, subsequently the child isn't yours, you put in your paperwork to get reimbursed for the money you paid. That's a big assumption that their money is going to be there. It's probably not going to be there. What would you have to do? Wait until they garnish the person's tax refund? I mean, I don't know. I think it could just get yeah, hey, they tried to get me, man. It was the glasses, man, because I'm a good guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a good guy. It was crazy too. I'm gonna tell y'all the story since I brought it up and we on the subject. But I'm gonna tell y'all the story. It was funny too because I was like dating my wife like as this whole thing was going on. But I was fairly confident. Your boy, I was safe, so I felt relatively well. But it was just one of those things where they were like, it was this guy with the glasses. He seems like a nice guy. I was like, what? so it's interesting. But those things happen. It will be no way in the world that you could do any type of repayment by the mother because chances are that money has been spent on medical appointments. That money has been spent on anything. It could have been spent on anything. Housing costs. It could have been spent on anything. I just don't see them having a mechanism to get that money back. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think of just the economic impact of how that law can play. Now, I will tell you, it'll generate a lot of money for the state. It will generate a lot of money for the state. Anytime there's a child support enforcement order and you have to go through the court system, they get money. You have to pay to be on child support, essentially. That's just kind of how the name of the game works. A lot of people even yeah. I would agree with that statement. That's what it is. I think so. I think it was the glasses. You know what I mean? If I had the glasses, I don't think I would have been I felt like I was in a lineup at when the cops bring somebody in and they got everybody holding their number, taking pictures. That's how I felt when under these false accusations. I was it was a travesty that they tried to degrade me that way. It was all good. Me and the young lady, we still cool and everything. But I remember that like it was nothing because I was pissed off. I was pissed off, but you couldn't be pissed off. You know what I mean? You can't be pissed off to the point where you acting like a jerk. You got to still be cordial about things. But yeah, it's just going to be a mess. It'll generate a lot of revenue, I think, for the government because if a person is on probation or pay child support, you have to pay to partake in that service. I know a story of I have a partner of mine who was on child support, and this dude was a truck driver, and he had his own truck, so he made a lot of money. He was gone all the damn time, but he made a good income. And his thing was, I'm not sending my money down to the courthouse to take care of my kids. So he would cut his baby's mother. We'll use that phrase. He was cut his baby mother's check. He would get his kid stuff. I mean, and this dude took meticulous notes. You hear a lot of guys say that and don't do anything, but no, this dude had notes. He had postal money order receipts. He went through everything. He just was like, I don't mind. I mean, he was probably paying like, I know he sat down and showed me once, and it probably was like maybe $4,000 that he spent in a month just with, giving money to help her with the bills and maintain the place and buying the kid stuff and for daycare and the private school. And he just didn't want to go through the court system. So he was like, yeah, I'm not going to let the court system. I'm not going to let the man tell me what to do and how to raise my kids. I give them what they need when I need it. But apparently that relationship wasn't one of the greatest relationships. With him and his baby mother. She took him to court. And what did the court do? Think about it. This dude's a truck driver, so they suspended his license so he didn't have an ability to make money. That don't even make sense. Like I don't practice family law, but that don't even make any good sense. They suspended and pretty much stalled him up so he couldn't make any money. So he had to do everything through the court system. And crazy enough, how it ended up playing out when they actually went through the whole court process to establish child support and the amounts, it ended up being substantially less. It ended up being substantially less what the child support order was than what he was actually doing unilaterally on his own. So it ended up kind of kicking her in the ass, I guess, so to speak. But it's going to be it's going to be crazy. I kind of looked at some of the stats. I can't even say it. I looked at some of the stats just on some child support statistics, and a lot of people are in arrears when it comes to child support. A lot of people go, and I'm not sure if it's still the same way in North Carolina, but I know in North Carolina. And Judy, you could correct me if I'm wrong, since this is probably a little bit more your area of expertise. But I used to have criminal defendants as clients, or criminal clients. They didn't become defendants today if they were convicted of the crime. But I used to have clients who would have to do 30, 60-day stints solely for child support. And it was wild because if I'm not mistaken, I didn't believe that, or I don't think that, if you were in arrears a certain amount, once you sit down for 30, 60 days, you still in arrears that same amount. So, and most, I can't speak, but the clients I had a few who were actually like working, but may have lost a job. So they just kind of fell on hard times. Now, of course, I had some who was just douchebags, and just didn't want to pay. And so I think that's going to be wild. It's going to be a lot of craziness that's going to develop if that bill is actually able to get enough support to become a law. I just don't think that, I don't know. It depends on where you stand with it. There are costs associated with the actual bearing of a child. So we can't say that there aren't costs there. But, I just think that that's going to be, I don't know if y'all seen 50 Cent post related to that law. He's like, I just quit. I'm not having no more kids ever. Like 50, you already got like 4 or 5. But it's just one of those things where it's going to really open the door up to a lot of litigation over it. This is a funny child support story. I was in domestic violence court, I was in domestic violence court. That came out wrong as hell. I was handling a case in DV court, and one of the judges in DV court, he was a retired judge who just came back to handle domestic violence cases. And this guy had to be like 10,000 years old. Like I saw him driving to court one day, and I slowed down because I was like, I don't want to be next to this dude in traffic. He had to be like, I ain't gonna say 10,000. He maybe was like 9,997 years old, but he was up there. He would get tired. Like when he started getting grouchy, everybody be like, oh, we need to end court. He need to go get something to eat. Like that was just kind of the running joke. And so I was talking to this judge, and he was telling us just kind of about how things were back in the day. Oh, I see Judy chimed in. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, they still putting folks in for being in arrears. And I get it. You know what I mean? Like I said, child support is one of those things where I can see both sides of the argument. There's two things could be true about something, and this is one of those scenarios. But this old judge told us, he was like, back in the day before paternity tests, to establish paternity, they would bring the child to court and the bailiff would hold the kid up and just put him next to the father, and the judge would just look at him and be like, yeah, that's your child. You got to pay child support. I was like, that's terrible. I was like, that is terrible. Yeah, that's another point. Once you open the door to something like this, is like it's like peeling an onion back. A bill gets passed, it becomes law, and then 65 layers that they didn't think about at the time they created the bill come into play that can impact things. I mean, I think just think about the additional staff you're going to need just to do the testing, just to do the collections. Because, I mean, it's just going to increase everything tenfold, in my opinion. Yeah. So, that's a fact. There's a lot that comes with, actually carrying a child from a monetary standpoint. So I definitely understand that, and I can wrap my mind around the logic. I think that there has to be some contingencies in place to make, if this is the road that's going to be where they're going to go down, I think they have to make contingencies in place to at least establish paternity prior to the child support order being entered. If they can do that, then I'm fine with it. I think that'll be a start. I won't necessarily say I'm fine with it, but I think that'll be a start to say that, okay, if I were a woman, I was pregnant, which I would never be pregnant. If I were a woman, I would be a virgin, but that's a whole nother story. But if I were a woman, I was pregnant. If I want to put in order to get child support and have everything figured out to collect child support from a purported father, a person who I'm saying is the father, it has to be one of two things. That father has to either come away and sign and be like, okay, yeah, I'm signing this paperwork saying I'm legitimizing this child as mine. It's kind of the equivalent of when the father signs a birth certificate, it legitimizes that child. Once he signs it, you are kind of presumed to be the father because you signed that birth certificate. So option A, woman applies for the benefits. The father signs something to legitimize that child at that stage early on. And then you work out the child support order, what the payments would be. Option B, because I already know a lot of guys like, I ain't signing that. I know a lot. Hey, it is what it is. A lot of guys are not going to sign it. If guys don't sign it, the child support order and amount and everything has to be established after paternity is established. Because according to the language of the statute, it already allows for them to pay back pay. So if they didn't get the child support order to month 6, they could actually get back pay for that. Now, the other question that came about, and I thought this was a fair point, move to another country. Okay, I got an interesting story about being in other countries and the taking care of a child. So okay, I was in the military. I was stationed in Germany, which, oh man, I loved it over there. Amsterdam, Poland, all these places you could travel, you can drive to. And so I'm stationed in Germany, right? And what will happen is, when you're overseas, you can't even bring, at this time, you got to think this is like 2009-11 time. So it's heightened security. Before then, military posts overseas, you could just drive on. Anybody could drive on. It wouldn't be a big deal. But after then, it got kind of tied down security. So when guys would go out to the club, they would bring back, a girl or their girlfriend or something for the weekend or whatever it was. They had to go through this whole process at the front gate, signing in, looking at all this paperwork and everything. And so what would happen, this is the craziest thing I ever seen. I don't know if it's still like this in Germany, But Germany essentially allows you to just like cut a check early on to kind of relinquish all of your paternity rights. It was the craziest thing I ever seen in a life. But, you know, I'm not going to say me because I was an upstanding guy when I was in the military. I was an upstanding guy when I was in the military. But it wouldn't be uncommon for a random woman to come on post, get in contact with the chain of command, the commander, the first sergeant, and be like, oh, I'm pregnant by this particular soldier. And of course, the first sergeant would be like, well, who's the soldier? And they would give a name, and then, you know, that first sergeant or commander would talk to that soldier's supervisor. They would have to work everything out. Now, in this one instance, when you're overseas, they have these heaters that you use when you're in the field. If you're in Poland, Grafenwehr, where it get cold as hell, like 2-3 below, they have a heater, and they call it a Herman Nelson. That's the name of the heater. It's a Herman Nelson heater used to keep you warm, right? And so one day, I think I'm a young soldier. I'm maybe like a private first class. I'm all standing in formation, and the first sergeant called everybody out there, and he was like, I got a call this weekend from a young lady out on the economy who said that her child's father is stationed in this unit and he don't want to do the right thing. And so it's funny. So you see everybody. I remember it like it was yesterday. You see everybody looking around, like all the guys looking like, I hope it's not me. And so first sergeant finished with his speech. First sergeant says, let's jump back to that comment in a minute. But the first sergeant says, so this young lady called me, said that her father, her child's father is in this unit. He's not doing the right thing. So of course, I want my soldiers to do right by their kids. So I asked her, what is this soldier's name? She said that this soldier's name was Specialist Nelson, first name Herman. so some guy gave this poor girl the name of the heater that you use while you're in the field. And so she had no clue who the child's father was. Now, of course, through a process, they were able to find out. But they had it set up in Germany. This was like 2001 to 2003. So, you know, your boy getting up there. But they had it set up in Germany where if you were a father and paternity was established, you could essentially cut a check for a certain amount of money and just like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and pay this amount, and it hereby, you know, I forgo all of my paternal rights or something. And it was something that was negotiated between the mother and the government, of course. And of course, the government ended up eating the bill because ain't no damn soldier making enough to, like, what you think? A soldier not going to cut a check. Okay, the average cost to raise a child to 18 is $800,000. Here, let me pull out my checkbook. Soldier, it'd take a soldier working 65,000 years to make that much. It'd be more than that to make that much money. But they were able to sign away, come to some negotiation, and just sign it, and they never have to worry about their child. It was the craziest thing that I ever seen. But what it resulted in was the German government essentially flipping the bill for kids. Now, I will tell you, credit, I don't know. I only know one person who actually did that. But, you know, all of my boys who had children, they are outstanding fathers right now, and they post pictures with their kids all the time on social media. But that guy, I don't know. That guy, I'm not going to say that guy was in my circle, but that's crazy that you could sign away those type of rights. It's insane. Yeah. And that's another thing. When you actually posted that comment, I left a comment just asking a general question. But the other big question is this bill to pay child support by the father. And I use the father because the statute expressly says father. That's what they identify as father. We know that relationships can be male, female. But what about those unique situations where you have, like, you know, just a male who, you know, his sole part in this was to fertilize the egg, but, you know, the mother and her significant other, they want to raise this kid? Like, what would be the contingency, or what is the contingency for those particular situations where the father may not necessarily, or may actually have just said, oh, you know what? Hey, they wanted me to be a sperm donor. We wanted to do it they wanted to do it the old fashioned way. So because I'm the sperm donor, I don't have any technical rights. They would actually have to include some type of language to carve out those specific scenarios, because I've actually seen those scenarios, and I don't know if the counselor's still in the chat room, but I've actually seen scenarios where they were like, it was two women, guy. Hey, the guy is the sperm donor. They have the child. The initial thoughts is that the father would have no real rights to the child and they would handle everything. But because of some disagreement between those three parties, everybody potentially ends up back in court. Dad, father ends up in court. Mother carrying the child ends up in court. The mother's significant other ends up in court. Wife ends up in court. I mean, it's just so many avenues for this to be a crazy situation. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this law will actually pass. I don't think it'll have enough votes to pass. I just can't see it. It could probably pass the House, but I just can't see it having enough votes to pass the Senate. Cool. I was just talking about, those scenarios where the father only role is to fertilize the egg, and then he's supposedly out of the picture. And I don't even do family law, but I know colleagues who say that, hey, we've seen those type of arrangements where there's three parties involved in this, and something goes south, and then the next thing you know, everybody is back in court, and the father, who was presumed to be excluded from everything, gave up these rights, are now in a position where the court is ordering him to pay child support, even though that wasn't the initial agreement. So a law like this could be really interesting. Yeah, I don't see it passing. Yeah, it's going to stir up a lot of discussion. It's going to stir up a lot of debates. I generally, this topic in general, even if you just look outside of the fiscal and economics of it, it's just so far reaching. My general rule is I think people should be able to do what the hell they want to do. That's just kind of what my general rule is. I try to be consistent across the board. Like, hey, if I can't tell a woman what to do with their body, trust me, I don't have that power. I've been married for 15 years and I can't tell my wife what to do at all. It is what it is. I can respectfully ask. I can make some recommendations. But that's just kind of what it is. That's the name of the game. The non-biological father parent needs to also adopt the child, so they'll have custody rights if they break up. Now, interesting. That's actually a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, it's just so many emotions involved. You got people who are deadbeats who actually need to be on child support. You got some people who actually provide for their child, and they probably could work out agreement, but it may be some spite or some ill will to the parties involved. So, I mean, it's just so much that open these doors, but it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of interesting stories. Excuse me. And I think Maury is going to have Maury, Jerry Springer, those guys still around. They're going to have a hell of a lot of topics to discuss. Yeah. Yeah. Co-parenting, I mean, even contractually though, outside of an adoption, I've seen some cases where, because I did a little bit of research, I've seen some cases where they tried to contract some of those things out, with regard to, hey, I'm the father, I'm only acting as a donor in this case. So the parties concede that there's no financial responsibility or obligation for the father. And they actually had those kind of contract terms drafted up. But those contracts didn't always prove to be ironclad. It just kind of went to the court. And, it's interesting because I think from a contract standpoint, if I recall, I think the argument was un, whether or not one party was an undue influence to actually enter into the contract. I think the example I saw, that's how they were able to get out of that contract, because they were like, hey, this couple was trying to have children for years. They didn't consult anybody about the contract. So because they entered into this contract under undue influence, that was the reason they agreed to exclude the father of any financial obligations, because it was just, so it got a little bit of, it got real crazy. That being said, I always say, what's going on, Crystal? I know I saw your post too. I hope everything work out on that job front. I know it will, because you're a smart sister. So I know you're gonna get that job and be giving us an update soon. But I don't know. I think I say it all the time. Marriage, children, those are the most important decisions that you'll make, because whatever the consequences of those are, especially if you have children, I mean, for 18 to 21 years, you're going to have that responsibility. And honestly, that responsibility go past 18 to 21 years. That's how people like to think of it in the short term. Like, oh, like, it's crazy. I didn't know this. This was an actual stat. Someone mentioned it to me, but the divorce rate is higher after the children are 18. That's crazy. Like that is actually crazy. Like I never even thought about it. But the only reason it came up, I was talking to a homegirl of mine, and she said that one of her friends, like, that's what happened. Like, once his kids graduated, he was like, all right, I'm out, deuces. I took care of everything. So, I mean, children, marriage have everlasting financial impacts, especially children. It's expensive as hell to raise kids. Trust me, I know. Social support system have to be there. Yeah, if there's less dependency for one parent attaining medical care and child care. Yeah, and that's true too. But I also think that it cuts both ways, because let's think about this. If I stayed in Alabama or Arkansas somewhere, and they like, hey, abortion is illegal, we not having abortions because we think that a child is a person at the time the egg is fertilized. That's our position. So people are kind of in this position where, hey, if you have an abortion and you don't have the resources to go across state, like, thank God that 10-year-old who got raped and was pregnant with the rapist child, her family, I mean, not thank God, but her family had the resources to go across to another state and get what they needed to get done. Everybody's not going to have that resource. So people are going to have children, and they may not have the resources, the economic money, the resources to actually take care of the child. But meanwhile, in a lot of these states, they are opposed to like free pre-K and things like that to kind of help with the support system for children. So it's kind of a crazy situation. We don't believe in free daycare or free pre-K, but we do believe that you don't have the right to. So it's putting people in a tough situation. And that's why I say economics at the end of the day, in my opinion, it kind of boiled down to everything. Me and my boy was having this conversation when we was talking about this whole abortion thing. I said, it's all about economics. If you got the economics, if you got the money and the ends to go travel somewhere and have an abortion, and that's what you want to do, that's what you'll do. If you don't got the money, you're just at the whim of a law that could be deemed bad. It could be unconstitutional. It could be misogynistic, however you want to call it. You wonder why the divorce rate is higher at when children are 18? Because people stay together for the kids. Like, that's just kind of what it is. I think that's the reason, if you ask me. I think that it's common that, a lot of times, like, think about it. Divorce rates have historically been high. You're talking 49, 50%. So there's a lot of parents who come from homes where they didn't have a mother and a father in the home. So one of the things that they think is, and the mindset is, what, my parents weren't around. I'm going to make sure that our house stay together. And they do it solely for the kids. No matter how terrible, it could actually be worse for the parents to be in that household if it's a crazy ass relationship. But a lot of parents, just stick it out for the kids. And that's why I think that divorce rate is high. Because once the kids turn 18, you look and be like, uh-oh, the kids out now, they on their own. And you know what? I ain't really like you like that anyway for at least a good 7 years. So I think we should just cordially agree. So I think that's what's happening and kind of how it is coming into play. Yeah, waiting. That's what they say. It's cheaper to keep her. I don't know. I've never been a proponent of that though. My view is like, hey, if you're not happy, get out of there. Go somewhere and be happy. Kids can sense that. I don't know. I can't rationalize or see like no. If I didn't sign up for a roommate, if I wanted to get a roommate, I would get a damn roommate. That's just kind of my thing. But it's wild. Once you get married, you hear crazy stories about marriages. Before I got married, you see like, okay, yeah, you see some examples in your family or the older couple at church who've been married 60 years. So you got some stuff. But then when you get married, you hear stories like, what? You've been sleeping in the basement for 4 years. What the hell? Man, hell no. Nah. Ain't no way in hell. But it gets crazy. Let me see. Yeah, and that happens a lot too. And there are households where like everybody gets along, and it's not like strife or abuse or crazy arguments and crazy stuff like that. People just people grow, people change, and that was the situation that my homegirl told me. My homegirl told me that her father actually told her mother because she was the youngest and was like, "Hey, when she graduate, I'm leaving, but I'm gonna be around." And she was like, my mother actually for a while thought he was like kind of joking, like, nah. Like soon as she graduated, he was like, all right, well, hey, nice knowing you. It's good to, and that's just kind of it. I tell you, I was happy as hell when my mother and father got divorced. I was like, y'all getting a divorce? Thank God. Woo. I was elated. I was like, man, that shit it was so much better. So it depends on the circumstances. You got some people who can stay together in that household and operate it as a business and as a team and instill good values and good examples on the children. And you got some people like, nah, y'all need to go y'all separate ways because both of y'all crazy as hell. So then it was dope. But Christmas changed forever though. Once my parents got divorced, I had 2 Christmases, but anytime my mother get me something, I'd be like, oh, you got me a bike in a box that's not put together because you don't know how to put it together. I was like, that's what dads are for. So yeah, it gets kind of wild, but that's just kind of I wanted to just kind of chop it up and talk a little bit about how something is controversial as Roe versus Wade and abortion is going to spin back around and have a significant economic impact. Let's not even think about child support. Let's think about stimulus, because I actually saw an article where they talked about there's a possibility for a new stimulus check being issued. If a new stimulus check is being issued, and I think one of the stimulus checks, like the parent would get a certain amount, then for every child, they would get a certain amount. If the consensus is and the law is that, a child is considered a person at the time of conception. If a new stimulus comes out and I have 2 children, hey, I got child A and child B, and I'm pregnant with child C, I should get benefits for child C. Also, the tax consequences. I was fortunate where my son, I remember specifically, because I was praying, I was like, please, he's a December baby. I was like, please let him be born in December so I can get the tax benefit for the entire year. But now that can change how you look at the tax code. And I think that would be consistent if this bill passed and they're saying that a child is a person at the time of conception as is deemed by a medical provider for purposes of tax purposes. If you're pregnant, you should be able to get any deductions associated with having a child, because I think it would be consistent with what this law would be if this law passes. So it's going to be quite interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's happening. Also, in that case, is I don't know if you also saw in that case, where the 10-year-old was raped and ended up having to have this abortion. She had to leave her state, go to another state to have an abortion in Indiana. And apparently the attorney general in Indiana, some people aren't that smart, but the attorney general in Indiana went on Fox News and made a lot of statements related to the doctor who performed the abortion. And so now I see that the doctor is suing the attorney general in Indiana because of defamation. He went on Fox News, said a bunch of stuff related to her abilities as a medical practitioner, her disclosing patient information that doesn't appear to be true, or she's asserting it's not true. And so now the attorney general has a lawsuit in his hand, all out of abortion, litigation, tax implications, stimulus implications, child support implications, all because of a Supreme Court decision as it relates to abortion. Yeah, free daycare, free college. I think that's the norm. It was dope. I know when I was overseas, some countries had it set up to where what the state would provide or government would give you for college was based on your performance in high school. And I was like, that makes sense. If you were an A student, chances are you probably were going to get a free ride to a university, and that's just kind of how it worked out. If you were a C student, we would still give you a benefit, but it probably wouldn't be as much. They would have the potential to increase the amount of assistance that they were getting by the government. But they do have some real unique ways on how they do things. Yeah, universal health care. Universal health care is another one. Universal health care should be mandatory. I'm going to tell y'all right now, universal health care should be mandatory. As somebody, y'all already know, if y'all watching this channel, y'all already know somebody who had an aneurysm, then they went in a ruptured aneurysm, then they went in to clip that, found something else up there that wasn't supposed to be up there. I had to have surgery. I never forget the day of surgery. They bring everybody into this room, and this is during the pandemic. So they have all of these curtains up, and they bring everybody into the room. Everybody who's having surgery, you there like 0 dark 30. Like, come here, check in at 3 a.m. Your surgery gonna be at 5, whatever. And I never forget, at the time, they rolling everybody out to their bays to do surgery. And there was one guy, and I don't know what surgery he was having, but his insurance company didn't do his pre-approval, and they left his ass there. I was like, I couldn't imagine. I could never be a doctor for that sole reason, where I have the ability to help somebody, but because they don't have the pre-approval of the insurance provider, I'm not going to do it. And if you don't have insurance, it's a cold game. Because like I said, I had 1, 2, 3 surgeries, and I spent maybe 10 days in ICU. Oh, man, that bill was like $1.6 million. I looked at the bill. I remember when the bill came. It was like $1.6 million. I was like, thank God. I was so happy that I had insurance and I had a good insurance plan, because it takes one catastrophe to jam everything up. One catastrophe and it'll create a lot of problems, And that's the other thing too. You have those situations where, let's just kind of think about this. If this child support bill were to pass, you not only got, costs related to bearing a child, but if it's a difficult pregnancy, if the mother, because I've seen this and I've known people who actually had to pay for their childbirth out of their pocket because they didn't have insurance, or they had insurance that wouldn't cover the complete cost of childcare, or wouldn't give them, pay a substantial portion. So I actually know people who had to pay like $10,000, $16,000. I've seen people on YouTube who finance YouTubers who are like, hey, we're saving up money for the birth of this child because we know it's going to cost us this extra money to have the child. So, just think about it. I completely understand why some form of child support would need to be made to help with costs associated with a child. Because if you got to actually flip a bill to have a child in the hospital, that shit is not cheap. It's expensive as hell. And it should not be something that's expensive. Like, okay, like, I mean, we live in the United States. You think they could figure it out, but the problem is everything is about the dollar. The everything, you can't do anything in the United States without someone making the money. Like back in the day, if I wanted to be a barber, I could just go learn how to cut people's hair. And then once I learn it, I know it, I can open a barbershop. No, I have to maintain a license to be a barber. I have to have a certification. I have to hang that shit in my damn barbershop. And it acts money makes everything goes around. So that's the reason why we'll never have universal health care. I'm actually shocked that we don't have mandatory requirement for legal insurance, because they have that in some European countries. In some European countries, is actually a legal requirement that you maintain some type of legal insurance to cover yourself from litigations. Yeah, could you imagine, man? And I know it was companies out there. Used to be a company on the stock exchange. I don't think they no longer listed, but they were trying to get this legal insurance trend going in America, because it was something that we would see a lot overseas, where you were required, same way you're required to have car insurance, you were required to have some type of legal insurance to cover yourself in the event of someone sue you, someone slip and fall in front of your yard, or something crazy happens. And, you know, think about it. That would be a game changer, and it would generate so much revenue. The insurance, once you got insurance, now you got the government paying for claims. And when the government are paying for claims, the government pay more for things than what you would get on the economy. If the government needs this radio to go into a tank, that radio probably costs $500. The government probably paying $1,500 for the radio, because, hey, the contractors got to get their money. All of the government contractors who got the BlackRock, Blackwater, whatever they call, Brown and Root, all of these government contractors. At the end of the day, is all about money. That's why it costs for a person to be on probation. That's why it costs for a person to be on child support. So we're going to see where this goes. I don't think this bill is going to go anywhere anytime soon. I don't think they're going to have the votes in the Senate. And I think once the midterm elections come around, I don't think they're going to have any type of majority anyway. They may have a slim majority in the House, but it's probably going to be looking bad for Democrats. But that's it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about child support. The moral of the story is, hey, everybody, let's just be responsible. we can't count on the government to regulate everything and do it with perfection, because as we can see, you know, sometimes I read statutes for cases that I'm working, and I'm just like, who the hell wrote this? This doesn't even make any sense. And so they can't think of every particular avenue, every particular outcome. So, hey, at the end of the day, we got to make smart decisions, smart choices. Hey, especially when it comes to children, because that's a choice that you're going to have to pay for and deal with for the rest of your life. Hey, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hey, as always, I love y'all. Y'all take care. Have a good weekend. And I got something lighter for y'all. I actually had something light that was really, I think, a funny story. I'm going to probably put that out either tomorrow or Monday, because I wanted to get to it. But once I saw this child support thing, I was like, damn, I need to talk about this. Y'all take care. Have a good weekend. Peace.